Good wishes to all of you. Textbook in history for class 11. Theme in world history. Displacing indigenous peoples. This chapter recounts some aspects of the histories of the native people of America and Australia. Theme 8 described the history of the Spanish and Portuguese colonization of South America. From the 18th century, more areas of South America, Central America, North America, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand came to be settled by immigrants from Europe. This led to many of the native peoples being pushed out into other areas. The European settlements were called colonies. When the European inhabitation of the colonies became independent of the European mother country, these colonies became states or countries. In the 19th and 20th centuries, people from Asian countries also migrated to some of these countries. Today, these European and Asian from the majority in these countries, and the number of the native inhabitants are very small. They are hardly seen in the towns, and people have forgotten that they once occupied much of the country, and that the name of many rivers, towns, etc. are derived from native names. Example: Ohio, Mississippi, and Seattle in the USA, Saskatchewan in Canada, Wollongong and Parramatta in Australia. Middle of the 20th century, American and Australian history textbooks used to describe how Europeans discovered the Americas and Australia. They hardly mention the native peoples except to suggest that they were hostile to Europeans. These peoples were, however, studied by anthropologists in America from the 1840s. Much later, from the 1960s, the native peoples were encouraged to write their own histories or to dictate them. This is called oral history. Today, it is possible to read historical works and fiction written by the native peoples, and visitors to museums in these countries will see galleries of native art and special museums which show the aboriginal way of life. The new National Museum of the American Indian in the USA has been curated by American Indians themselves. European imperialism. The American empires of Spain and Portugal, theme 8, did not expand after the 17th century. From that time, other countries, France, Holland, and England, began to extend their trading activities and to establish colonies in America, Africa, and Asia. Ireland also was virtually a colony of England, as the landowners there were mostly English settlers. From the 18th century, it became obvious that while it was the prospect of profit which drove people to establish colonies, there were significant variations in the nature of the control established. In South Asia, trading companies like the East India Company made themselves into political powers, defeated local rulers, and annexed their territories. They retained the older, well-developed administrative system and collected taxes from landowners. Later, they built railways to make trade easier, excavated mines, and established big plantations. In Africa, Europeans trade on the coast, except in South Africa, and only in the late 19th century did they venture into the interior. After this, some of the European countries reached an agreement to divide up Africa as colonies for themselves. The word settler is used for the Dutch in South Africa, the British in Ireland, New Zealand, and Australia, and the Europeans in America. The official language in these colonies was English, except in Canada, where French is also an official language. Names given by European to countries of the New World. America, first used after the publication of the Travels of Amerigo Vespucci, 1451 to 1512. Canada, from Kanata village in the language of the Huron Iroquois, is as here by the explorer Jacques Cartier in 1535. Australia, 16th century name for land in the Great Southern Ocean. Austral is Latin for south. New Zealand, name given by Tasman of Holland who was the first to sight these islands in 1642. G is Dutch for sea. The Geographical Dictionary, page 80522, lists over 100 place names in the Americas and Australia which begin with new. North America. The continent of North America extends from the Arctic Circle to the Tropic of Cancer, from the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean. West of the chain of the Rocky Mountains is the desert of Arizona and Nevada. Still further west, the Sierra Nevada Mountains. To the east, the Green Plains, the Great Lakes, the valleys of the Mississippi and the Ohio, and the Appalachian Mountains. To the south is Mexico. 40% of Canada is covered with forest, oil, gas and mineral resources are found in many areas, which explains the many big industries in the USA and Canada. Today, wheat, corn and fruit are grown extensively, and fishing is a major industry in Canada. Mining industry and extensive agriculture have been developed only in the last 200 years by immigrants from Europe, Africa and China, but there were people who had been living in North America for thousands of years before the Europeans learnt of its existence. Native means a person born in the place he or she lives in. Till the early 20th century, the term was used by Europeans to describe the inhabitants of countries they had colonized. The native peoples. The earliest inhabitants of North America came from Asia over 30,000 years ago on a land bridge across the Bering Straits, and during the last ice age 10,000 years ago they moved further south. The oldest artifact found in America, an arrow point, is 11,000 years old. The population started to increase about 5,000 years ago when the climate became more stable. At sunset on the day before America, that is before the Europeans reached there and gave the continent this name, diversity lay at every hand. People spoke in more than 100 tongues. They lived by every possible combination of hunting, fishing, gathering, gardening and farming open to them. The quality of soils and the effort required to open and tend them determined some of their choices of how to live. Cultural and social bias biases determine others. Surpluses of fish or grain or garden plants or meats helped create powerful trade societies here but not there. Some cultures had endured for millennia. William McLeish, the day before America. These people lived in bands in villages along river valleys. They ate fish and meat and cultivated vegetables and maize. They often went on long journeys in search of meat, chiefly that of bison, the wild buffalo that roamed the grassland. This became easier from the 17th century when the natives started to ride horses, which they bought from Spanish settlers, but they only killed as many animals as they needed for food. Names of native tribes are often given to things unconnected with them. Dakota, an aeroplane; Cherokee, a jeep; Pontiac, a car; Mohawk, a haircut. Take a look at this illustration. Wampum belts made of colored shell sewn together were exchanged by native tribes after a treaty was agreed to. They did not attempt extensive agriculture, and since they did not produce a surplus, they did not develop kingdoms and empires as in Central and South America. There were some instances of quarrels between tribes over territory, but by and large control of land was not an issue. They were content with the food and shelter they got from the land without feeling any need to own it. An important feature of their traditions was that of making formal alliances and friendships and exchanging gifts. Goods were obtaining not by buying them but as gifts. Numerous languages were spoken in Northern America. Though these were not written down, they believed that time moved in cycles, and each tribe had accounts about their origins and their earlier history which were passed on from one generation to the next. They were skilled craftspeople and wove beautiful textiles. They could read the land they could understand the climates and different landscapes in the way literate people read written texts. Encounters with Europeans. Different terms are used in English for the native peoples of the New World. Aborigine, native people of Australia. In Latin, a form from origine is equal to the beginning. Aboriginal, adjective often misused as a noun. American Indian, Amerindian, native peoples of North and South America and the Caribbean. First Nations people, the organized native groups recognized by the Canadian government. The Indians Act of 1876 used the term bands, but from the 1980s the word nations is used. Indigenous people, people belonging naturally to a place. Native American, the indigenous people of the Americas. This is the term now commonly used. Red Indian, the brown complexioned people whose land Columbus mistook for India. A woman of the Winnebago tribe of Wisconsin. In the 1860s, people of this tribe were moved to Nebraska. The Hopis are the native tribe who now live near California. It was indicated on the stone tablets that the Hopis had that the first brothers and sisters that would come back to them would come as turtles across the land. They would be human beings, but they came as turtles. So when the time came close, the Hopis were at a special village to welcome the turtles that would come across the land, and they got up in the morning and looked out at the sunrise. They looked out across the desert and they saw the Spanish conquistadors coming covered in armor like turtles across the land. So this was them. So they went out to the Spanish man and they extended their hand hoping for the handshake, but into the hand the Spanish man dropped a trinket, and so word spread throughout North America that there was going to be a hard time, that maybe some of the brothers and sisters had forgotten the sacredness of all things, and all the human beings were going to suffer for this on the earth. In the 17th century, the European traders who reached the north coast of the North America after a difficult 2-month voyage were relieved to find the native peoples friendly and welcoming. Unlike the Spanish in South America, who were overcome by the abundance of gold in the country, these adventurers came to trade in fish and furs, in which they got the willing help of the natives who were expert at hunting. Further south along the Mississippi River, the French found that the natives held regular gatherings to exchange handicrafts unique to a tribe or food items not available in other regions. In exchange for local products, the Europeans gave the natives blankets, iron vessels which they used sometimes in place of their clay pots, guns which was a useful supplement for bows and arrows to kill animals, and alcohol. This last item was something the natives had not known earlier, and they became addicted to it, which suited the Europeans because it enabled them to dictate terms of trade. The Europeans acquired from the natives an addiction to tobacco. Quebec American colonies. 1497 John Cobbett reaches Newfoundland. 1507 Amerigo de Vespucci's travels publisher. 1534 Jacques Cartier travels down the St. Lawrence River and meets native peoples. 1608 French found the colony of Quebec. 1607 British found the colony of Virginia. American colonies. 1620 British found Plymouth in Massachusetts. Thomas Jefferson, third president of the USA and a contemporary of Wordsworth, spoke of the natives in words that would lead to a public outcry today. This unfortunate race, which we have been taking so much pains to civilize, have justified extermination. Many folk tales of the natives mocked Europeans and described them as greedy and deceitful, but because these were told as imaginary stories, it was only much later that the Europeans understood the references. Mutual perceptions. In the 18th century, Western Europeans defined civilized people in terms of literacy and organized religion and urbanism. To them, the natives of America appeared uncivilized. To some, like the French philosopher Jean Jacques Rousseau, such people were to be admired as they were untouched by the corruptions of civilization. A popular term was the noble savage. Some lines in a poem by the English poet William Wordsworth indicate another perspective. Neither he nor Rousseau had met a Native American, but Wordsworth described them as living amid wilds where fancy had the small liberty to grace, the affections to exalt them or refine, meaning that people living close to nature had only limited powers of imagination and emotion. It is interesting to note that another writer, Washington Irving, much younger than Wordsworth and who had actually met native people, described them quite differently. The Indians I have had an opportunity of seeing in real life are quite different from those described in poetry. Taciturn they are, it is true, when in company with the white men whose goodwill they distrust and whose language they do not understand, but the white man is equally taciturn under like circumstances. When the Indians are among themselves, they are great mimics and entertain themselves excessively at the expense of the whites, who have supposed them impressed with a profound respect for their grandeur and dignity. The white men, as I have witnessed, are prone to treat the poor Indians as little better than animals. To the natives, the goods they exchanged with the Europeans were gifts given in friendship. For the Europeans dreaming of becoming rich, the fish and furs were commodities which they would sell for a profit in Europe. The prices of the goods they sold varied from year to year, depending on the supply. The natives could not understand this. They had no sense of the market in faraway Europe. They were puzzled by the fact that the European traders sometimes gave them a lot of things in exchange for their goods, sometimes very little. They were also saddened by the greed of the Europeans. In their impatience to get first, they had slaughtered hundreds of beavers, and the natives were very uneasy, fearing that the animals would take revenge on them for this destruction. Following the first Europeans who were traders were those who came to settle in America from the 17th century. There were groups of Europeans who were being persecuted because they were of a different sect of Christianity. Protestants living in predominantly Catholic countries or Catholics in countries where Protestantism was the official religion. Many of them left Europe and went to America to begin a new life. As long as there was a vacant land, this was not a problem, but gradually the Europeans moved further inland near native villages. They used their iron tools to cut down forests to lay out farms. Natives and Europeans saw different things when they looked at forest. Natives identified tracks invisible to the Europeans. Europeans imagined the forest cut down and replaced by cornfields. Jefferson's dream was a country populated by Europeans with small farms. The natives who grew crops for their own needs, not for sale and profit, and though it wrong to own the land, could not understand this. In Jefferson's view, this made them uncivilized. Activity 1. Discuss the different image that Europeans and Native Americans had of each other and the different ways in which they saw nature. Take a look at map 1, the expansion of the USA. Canada, USA. 1701 French treaty with natives of Quebec. 1763 Quebec conquered by the British. 1774 Quebec Act. 1791 Canada Constitutional Act, USA. 1781 Britain recognized USA as an independent country. 1783 British gave Midwest to the USA. The countries that are known as Canada and the United States of America came into existence at the end of the 18th century. At that time, they occupied only a fraction of the land they now cover. Over the next 100 years, they extended their control over more territory. To reach their present size, large areas were acquired by the USA by purchase. They bought land in the south from France, the Louisiana Purchase, and from Russia, Alaska, and by war, much of southern USA was won from Mexico. It did not occur to anyone that the concept of native living in these areas should have been asked. The western frontier of the USA was a shifting one, and as it moved, the natives also were forced to move back. Canada, 1837 French Canadian Rebellion, 1840 Canadian Union of Upper and Lower Canada, 1859 Canada Gold Rush, 1867 Confederation of Canada, 1869 to 85 Red River Rebellion by the Métis in Canada, 1876 Canada Indians Act America, 1885 Transcontinental Railway links East and West Coasts USA, 1803 Louisiana purchased from France, 1825 to 58 natives in USA moved to reserves. 1832 Justice Marshall's judgment, 1849 American Gold Rush, 1861 to 65 American Civil War, 1865 to 90 American Indians Wars, 1870 Transcontinental Railway, 1890 Bison almost exterminated in 1892 end of American frontier. The landscapes of America changed drastically in the 19th century. The Europeans treated the land differently from the natives. Some of the migrants from Britain and France were younger sons who would not inherit their father's property and therefore were eager to own land in America. Later there was waves of immigrants from countries like Germany, Sweden and Italy who had lost their lands to big farmers and wanted farms they could own. People from Poland were happy to work in the prairie grasslands, which remind them of the steppes of their homes, and were excited at being able to buy huge properties at very low prices. They cleared land and developed agriculture, introducing crops rice and cotton, which could not grow in Europe and therefore could be sold there for profit. To protect their huge farms from wild animals, wolves and mountain lions, these were hunted to extinction. They felt totally secure only with the invention of barbed wire in 1873. Take a look at this illustration, a ranch in Colorado. The climate of the southern regions was too hot for Europeans to work outdoors, and the experience of South American colonies had shown that the natives who had been enslaved had died in large numbers. Plantation owners therefore bought slaves in Africa. Protests by anti-slavery groups led to a ban on slave trade, but the Africans who were in the USA remained slaves, as did their children. The northern states of the USA, where the economy did not depend on plantations and therefore on slavery, argued for ending slavery, which they condemned as an inhuman practice. In 1861 to 65, there was a war between the states that wanted to retain slavery and those supporting abolitions. The latter won. Slavery was abolished, though it was only in the 20th century that the African Americans were able to win the battle for civil liberties, and segregation between whites and non-whites in schools and public transport was ended. The Canadian government had a problem which was not to be solved for a long time and which seemed more urgent than the questions of the natives. In 1763, Canada had been won by the British after a war with France. The French settlers repeatedly demanded autonomous political status. It was only in 1867 that this problem was solved by organizing Canada as a confederation of autonomous states. the native peoples lost their land. In the USA, as settlement expanded, the natives were induced or forced to move after singing criticized selling their land. The prices paid were very low, and three were instances when the Americans, a term used to mean the European people of the USA, cheated them by taking more land or paying less than promised. Every high official saw nothing wrong in depriving the native peoples of their land. This is seen by an episode in Georgia, a state in the USA. Officials had argued that the Cherokee tribe was governed by state laws but could not enjoy the rights of citizens. This was despite the fact that of all the native peoples, the Cherokees were the ones who had made the most effort to learn English and to understand the American way of life. Even so, they were not allowed the rights of citizens. In 1832, an important judgment was announced by the US Chief Justice John Marshall. He said that the Cherokees were a distinct community occupying its own territory in which the laws of Georgia had no force, and that they had sovereignty in certain matters. US President Andrew Jackson had a reputation for fighting against economic and political privilege, but when it came to the Indians, he was a different person. He refused to honor the Chief Justice's judgment and ordered the US Army to evict the Cherokees from their land and drive them to the great American desert of the 15,000 people thus forced to go over a quarter died along the Trail of Tears. Those who took the land occupied by the tribes justified it by saying the natives did not deserve to occupy land which they did not use to the maximum. They went on to criticize them for being lazy since they did not use their craft skills to produce goods for the market, for not being interested in learning English or dressing correctly, which meant like the Europeans, they deserved to die out, they argued. The prairies were cleared for farmland and wild beasts killed off. Primitive man will disappear with the primitive animal, wrote a visiting Frenchman. Activity 2. Comment on these two sets of population data. USA 1820, Spanish America 1800. Natives 0.6 million, Spanish America 7.5 million. Whites 9.0 million, Spanish 3.3 million. Mixed Europeans 0.1 million, Spanish Americans 5.3 million. Blacks 1.9 million, Spanish Americans 0.8 million. Total 11.6 million, Spanish America 16.9 million. Meanwhile, the natives were pushed westward, given land elsewhere. There's in perpetuity, but often moved again if any mineral, lead or gold or oil was found on their lands. Many tribes were forced to share the land originally occupied by one tribe, thus leading to quarrels between them. They were locked off in small areas called reservations, which often was land with which they had no earlier connection. They did not give in without a fight. The US Army crushed a series of rebellions from 1865 to 1890, and in Canada there were armed revolts by the Métis, people of native European descent, between 1869 and 1885, but after that they gave up. Take a look at this illustration, a native lodge 1862. Archaeologists moved this from the mountain and placed it in a museum in Wyoming. Anthropology, it is significant that it was at this time from the 1840s that the subject of anthropology, which had been developed in France, was introduced in North America out of a curiosity to study the differences between native primitive communities and the civilized communities of Europe. Some anthropologists argued that just as there were no primitive people to be found in Europe, the American natives too would die out. In 1854, the President of the USA received a letter from a native leader, Chief Seattle. The President had asked the chief to sign a treaty giving a large part of the land they lived on to the American government. The chief replied, "How can you buy or sell the sky, the warmth of the land? The idea is strange to us. If you do not own the freshness of the air and the sparkle of the water, how can one buy them? Every part of the earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every clearing and every humming insect is holy in the memory and experience of my people. The sap which courses through the trees carries the memories of the red men." So when the great chief in Washington sends word that he wishes to buy our land, he asks much of us. The great chief sends word that he will reserve us a place so that we can live comfortably. He will be our father and we will be his children. So we will consider your offer to buy our land, but it will not be easy. For this land is sacred to us. The shining water that moves in the streams and rivers is not just water but the blood of our ancestors. If we sell you land, you must remember that it is sacred, and you must teach your children that it is sacred, and that each ghostly reflection in the clear water of the lakes tells of events and memories in the life of my people. The water's murmur is the voice of my father's father. The gold rush and the growth of industries. There was always the hope that there was gold in North America. In the 1840s, traces of gold were found in the USA. In California, this led to the gold rush, when thousands of eager Europeans hurried to America in the hope of making a quick fortune. This led to the building of railway lines across the continent, for which thousands of Chinese workers were recruited. The USS railway was completed by 1870, that of Canada by 1885. The old nations creep on at a snail's pace, said Andrew Carnegie, a poor immigrant from Scotland who became one of the first millionaire industries in the USA. The Republic thunders on at the speed of an express. One reason why the Industrial Revolution happened in England when it was because small peasants were losing their land to big farmers and moving to jobs in factories. See theme 9. In North America, industries developed for a very different reasons: to manufacture railway equipment so that rapid transport could link distant places, and to produce machinery which would make large scale farming easier. Industrial towns grew and factories multiplied both in the USA and Canada. In 1860, the USA had been an undeveloped economy. In 1890, it was the leading industrial power in the world. Take a look at the first illustration, moving to California as part of the gold rush photograph. Take a look at second illustration. Above, immigrants welcomed by the USA color print 1909. Take a large imagination in the 224 page below. The ranch on the prairie that was the dream of poor European immigrants photograph. Large-scale agriculture also expanded. Vast areas were cleared and divided up into farms. By 1890, the bison had almost been exterminated, thus ending the life of hunting the natives had followed for centuries. In 1892, the US's continental expansion was complete. The area between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans was divided into states. There no longer remained the frontier that had pulled European settlers west for many decades. Within a few years, the USA was setting up its own colonies in Hawaii and the Philippines. It had become an imperial power. Karl Marx, 1818 to 83, the great German philosopher, described the American frontier as the last positive capitalist utopia, the limitless nature and space to which the limitless thirst for profit adapts itself. Bastiat and Carey Grundriss. Constitutional rights, the democratic spirit which had been the rallying cry of the settlers in their fight for independence in the 1770s, came to define the identity of the USA against the monarchies and aristocracies of the old world. Also important to them was that their constitution included the individual's right to property, which the state could not override. But both democratic rights, the right to vote for representatives to Congress and for the president, and the right to property were only for white men. Daniel Paul, a Canadian native, pointed out in 2000 that Thomas Paine, the champion of democracy at the time of the war for American independence and the French Revolution, used the Indians as models of how society might be organized. He used this to argue that the Native Americans, by their example, sowed the seeds for the long drawn out movements towards democracy by the people of Europe. We were not the savages. Page 333. The winds of change. Not till the 1920s did things begin to improve for the native peoples of the USA and Canada. The problem of Indian administration, a survey directed by social scientist Louis Merriam and published in 1928, only a few years before the USA was swept by a major economic depression that affected all its people, painted a grim picture of the terribly poor health and education facilities for natives and reservations. White Americans felt sympathy for the natives who were being discouraged from the full exercise of their cultures and simultaneously denied the benefits of citizenship. This led to a landmark law in the USA, the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, which gave natives in reservations the right to buy land and take loans. In the 1950s and 1960s, the US and Canadian governments thought of ending all special provisions for the natives in the hope that they would join the mainstream, that is, adopt European culture. But the natives did not want this. In 1954, in the Declaration of Indian Rights prepared by them, a number of native peoples accepted citizenship of the USA, but on condition that their reservation would not be taken away and their traditions would not be interfered with. A similar development occurred in Canada. In 1969, the government announced that they would not recognize Aboriginal rights. The natives, in a well organized opposition, held a series of demonstrations and debates. The question could not be resolved till 1982, when the Constitution Act accepted the existing Aboriginal and treaty rights of the natives. Many details remain to be worked out. Today, it is clear that the native peoples of both countries, though reduced so much in numbers from what they had been in the 18th century, have been able to assert their right to their own cultures, and particularly in Canada, to their sacred land in the way their ancestors could not have done in the 1880s. Activity 3. Comment on the following statement by the American historian Howard Spodek. For the indigenous people, the effects of the American Revolution were exactly opposite to those of the settlers. Expansion became contraction, democracy became tyranny, prosperity became poverty, and liberty became confinement. Indians under British rule, taxed arbitrarily seen as not equal, rationalization not ready for responsibility of representative government. Natives in America and not seen as citizens, not equal, Australia, rationalization primitives, as in no settled agriculture provision for the future towns. African slaves in America, denied personal liberty, not equal, rationalization, slavery is part of their own social system, black people are inferior, Australia. As in the Americas, human habitation in Australia has a long history. The Aborigines, a general name given to a number of different societies, began to arrive on the continent over 40,000 years ago, possibly even earlier. They came from New Guinea, which was connected to Australia by a land bridge. In the natives' traditions, they did not come to Australia but had always been there. The past centuries were called the Dreamtime, something difficult for Europeans to understand since the distinction between past and present is blurred. In the late 18th century, there were between 350 and 750 native communities in Australia, each with its own language. Even today, 200 of these languages are spoken. There is another large group of indigenous people living in the north called the Torres Strait Islanders. The term Aborigine is not used for these as they are believed to have migrated from elsewhere and belong to a different race. Together, they make up 2.4% of Australians' population in 2005. Australia is sparsely populated, and even now, most of the towns were along the coast where the British first arrived in 1770 because the central region is arid desert. The Europeans reached Australia. 1606 Dutch travelers sight Australia. 1642 Tasman lands on the island, later named Tasmania. 1770 James Cook reaches Botany Bay, named New South Wales. 1788 British Spencer Colony formed, Sydney founded. Take a look at map to Australia. The story of the interaction between the European settlers, the native people and the land in Australia has many points of similarity to the story of the Americas. Though it began nearly 300 years later, initial reports from Captain Cook and his crew about encounters with natives are enthusiastic about their friendliness. There was a sharp reversal of a feeling on the part of the British when Cook was killed by a native not in Australia but in Hawaii. As often happened, a single incident of this nature was used by colonists to justify subsequent acts of violence towards other people. A description of the Sydney area in 1790. Aboriginal production had been dramatically distributed by the British presence. The arrival of 1,000 hungry mouths, followed by hundreds more, put unprecedented pressure on local food resources. So, what would the direct people have thought of all this? To them, such large scale destruction of sacred places and strange, violent behavior towards their land was inexplicable. The newcomers seemed to knock down trees without any reason. So they were not making canoes, gathering bush honey, or catching animals. Stones were moved and stacked together, clay dug up, shaped and cooked. Holes were made in the ground, large unwieldy structures built. At first, they may have equated the clearing with the creation of a sacred ceremonial ground. Perhaps they thought a huge ritual gatherings was to be held, dangerous business from which they should steer well clear. There is no doubt the Daruks subsequently avoided the settlement, for the only way to bring them back was by an official kidnapping. P. Grimshaw, M. Lake, A. McGrath, M. Quartley, Creating a Nation. Activity 4. In 1911, it was announced that New Delhi and Canberra would be built as the capital cities of British India and of the Commonwealth of Australia. Compare and contrast the political situations of the native people in these countries at that time. They did not foresee that in the 19th and 20th centuries, nearly 90% of them would die by exposure to germs, by the loss of their lands and resources, and in battles against the settlers. The experiment of settling Brazil with Portuguese convicts had been abandoned when their violent behavior provoked angry reprisals from the natives. The British had adopted the same practice in the American colonies until they became independent. Then they continued it in Australia. Most of the early settlers were convicts who have been deported from England and when their jail term ended were allowed to live as free people in Australia on condition that they did not return to Britain. With no resource but to make a life for themselves in this land so different from their own. They felt no hesitations about ejecting natives from land they took over for cultivation. The development of Australia. 1850 self-government granted to Australian colonies. 1851 Chinese colony immigration stopped by law in 1855. 1851 to 1961 gold rushes. 1901 formation of Federation of Australia with 6 states. 1911 Canberra established as capital. 1948 to 75 2 million Europeans migrate to Australia. The economic development of Australia under European settlement was not as varied as in America. Vast sheep farms and mining stations were established over a long period and with much labor, followed by vineyards and wheat farming. These came to form the basic basis of the country's prosperity. When the states were united and it was decided that a new capital would be built for Australia in 1911. One name suggested for it was Woolwich Coal. Ultimately, it was called Canberra is equal to Canberra, a native word meaning meeting place. Some natives were employed in farms under conditions of work so harsh that it was little different from slavery. Later, Chinese immigrants provided cheap labor as in California, but unease about being dependent on non-whites led to the government in both countries to ban Chinese immigrants. Till 1974, such was the popular fear that dark people from South Asia or Southeast Asia might migrate to Australia in large numbers that there was a government policy to keep non-white people out. The winds of change. In 1968, people were electrified by a lecture by the anthropologist W. E. H. Stanner entitled The Great Australian Silence. The silence of historians about the aborigines from the 1970s as was happening in North America. There was a eagerness to understand natives not as anthropological curiosities but as communities with distinct cultures, unique ways of understanding nature and climate, with a sense of community which had vast bodies of stories, textile and painting and carving skills which should be understood and recorded and respected. Underlining it was all the urgent questions which Henry Lyons later articulated in a powerful book. Why aren't we told? This condemned the practice of writing Australian history as though it had begun with Captain Cook's discovery. Since then, university departments have been instituted to study native cultures. Galleries of native art have been added to art galleries. Museums have been enlarged to incorporate dioramas and imaginatively designed rooms explaining native culture, and natives have begun writing their own life histories. This has been a wonderful effort. It has also occurred at a critical time because if natives cultures had remained ignored by this time, much of such cultures would have been forgotten. From 1974, multiculturalism has been official policy in Australia, which gave equal respect to native cultures and to the different cultures of the immigrants from Europe and Asia. Judd Wright, 1915 to 2000, an Australian writer, was a champion of the rights of the Australian Aborigines. She wrote many moving poems about the laws created by keeping the white people and the natives apart. Kathy, my sister, with a torn heart, I don't know how to thank you for your dreamtime stories of joy and grief written on paper book. You were on one of the dark children I wasn't allowed to play with them. Riverbank campers, the wrong color. I couldn't turn you white. So it was late I met you. Late I began to know. They had not told me the land I loved was taken out of your hands. Two dreamtimes written for Odgero Nonkyal. From the 1970s, as the term human rights began to be heard at meetings of the UNO and other international agencies, the Australian public realized with dismay that, in contrast of the USA, Canada, and New Zealand, Australia had no treaties with the natives formalizing the takeover of land by Europeans. The government had always termed the land of Australia terra nullius, that is belonging to nobody. There was also a long and astonishing history of children of mixed blood native European being forcibly captured and separated from their native relatives. Agitation around these questions led to inquiries and to two important decisions. One, to recognize that the natives had stronger historic bonds with the land which was sacred to them and which should be respected too. That while past acts could not be undone, there should be a public apology for the injustice done to children in an attempt to keep white and colored people apart. 1974, White Australia policy ends Asian immigrants allowed entry. 1992, Australian High Court in the Mabocas declares that terra nullius was legally invalid and recognizes native claims to land from before 1770. 1995, National Inquiry into the separation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their families. 1999, 26th May, a national sorry day as apology for the children lost from the 1820s to the 1970s. Exercises. Answer in brief. Question number 1. Comment on any point of difference between the native peoples of South and North America. Question number 2. Other than the use of English, what other feature of English economic and social life do you notice in 19th century USA? Question number 3. What did the frontier mean to the Americans? Question number 4. Why was the history of the Australian native peoples left out of history books? Answer in a short essay. Question number 5. How satisfactory is a museum gallery display in explaining the culture of a people? Give examples from your own experience of a museum. Question number 6. Imagine an encounter in California in about 1880 between four people: a former African slave, a Chinese laborer, a German who had come out in the gold rush, and a native of the Hopi tribe, and narrate their conversation. Thank you.